responding then to some of the issues already being raised around the 11.5 billion rands. Here to continue the debate, I'm joined by SAFTU General Secretary Zwelinzima Vavi, political economist Ishmael Lagardian, as well as Patrick Bond, also with us tonight. Gentlemen, well, you've heard for yourself the reasoning and what informs this further 11.5 billion rands loan. It's, in a sense, part of the growth borrowing requirements of the country in broad terms. Let's begin with you, Zwelinzima Vavi. I mean, you raised the issue of the commodities boom getting us reserves. The minister says there's no reserves. Forget about that. Besides, we had clearly indicated when we tabled the budget that we will be borrowing. So this 11.5 billion is part of the 630 billion rands that we already said we are going to borrow.
Well, I'm disappointed at you. I thought that you were going to demand of the minister first that he places the conditions that are attached to this loan.
No, I said there were no terms and conditions except for the fact that...
No, there's no such thing. He considered that nobody gives the money without any conditions. They will not, and they have not ever put up those conditions for public scrutiny. And in SAFTU, we insist that the new minister must come in as a new broom and publish the conditions that are attached to this loan, because historically, the World Bank and the IMF, in line with what the minister is saying, there's no free money, nobody gives money for mahala, have always used the conditionalities to their loans to dictate local and domestic policy. Yeah. And this is reflected, as we point out, in the statement that we issued by the Minister of Finance, the previous minister, Minister Tito Mboweni, who in early 2021, perhaps frustrated by these negotiations, made a public statement, and he said, and we quote him, if the World Bank thinks it can dictate policy, let them keep their sense. I will just issue bonds here at home.
Yeah.
That was then. Yeah. Of course,
I did put that to him very sharply, and he says, this is the reason why we only borrow internationally 15%, and 85% of our borrowing is domestic. So he says there's no way that people who we owe 15% can dictate the policy in the country.
If that is the case, then you must put up the conditions in the department's website tomorrow, and so that we can all have a look, see his signature and see the signature of the World Bank officials. We really don't like the fact that countries are all queuing up. In this case, we insist, totally unnecessarily, at the doors of the World Bank, just because of some ratio decided in some air-conditioned boardroom, not informed by any realities of South Africa. South Africa have had a boom, unprecedented trade surplus of close to 500 billion rands in 2021. The World Bank's hard currency loan is not necessary in our view. He denies that there is reserves as a result of that, but then he must say what have happened to that trade balance of 500 billion rands.
It financed, amongst other things, the unrest, the COVID-19 response, etc., etc. We'll take a break and come back and get Ishmael as well as Patrick Bond to weigh in as well on the conversation. Zwelinzima Vavi of SAFTU, political economist, Ishmael Lagardian, as well as Patrick Bond. Ishmael, let's bring you in here. I mean, the minister saying, yeah, if we are having a broader conversation around the rate at which we are borrowing, he concedes. Yeah, he's also worried. Maybe we are borrowing too much in the overall scheme of things. But if we are talking about this 11.5 billion that they're getting from the World Bank, is quite insignificant when you look at the growth borrowing requirements of government. Does it make sense?
It makes sense only if you look at the books, and if you look at the balances on paper. But there are so many contingent factors that need to be taken into consideration. I think Zwelinzima Vavi raised some of those issues, and I heard the minister. The minister kept saying this is a separate issue and that's a separate issue, but I don't know if I can actually say that, accept that. These things are all linked. They're all interwoven, and we need to discuss this as a complete, not in conspiratorial terms, but we must always retain what I believe is what I want to refer to as the truth conditionalities. That means basically when we say it's raining outside, it has to be actually raining. So when he says something is happening or something will be happening, there has to be truth in it. And at the moment, it just seems like he's trying to push certain discussions away from the main concerns, which I think are, look, let's accept that that is a done deal. The deal has been done, it's been negotiated. I happen to know it's been negotiated over a long time. It's a done deal. So what we as responsible citizens have to do now is to ensure transparency. We have to ensure that the efficacy of the money, not just the efficiency, it needs to reach the target of the target publicum, as so to speak. So I think the minister needs to be a lot more clearer on that, especially on the conditionalities, because one of the main problems is all these historically, as Mr. Vavi has mentioned, historically banks have come with, all this money has come with conditionalities. Yeah. And
one of the directors, sorry Ismail, let me come in here. One of the directors at Treasury is saying, well, I mean, except for the condition that we've got to repay this loan, this has been allocated on the basis of prior action. So the World Bank kind of looked at the prior action that has been taken in government as far as our fiscal framework is concerned, but also the condition is the work that is being done around COVID-19 is something that
right.
I am hearing.
Yeah, so he's reflecting, and this is one of the unfortunate responses that I've been following all afternoon since when I heard that when I was invited to the show, I've been following a lot of the responses, and they've been very unfortunate. People have been doing a lot of really bad gaslighting, saying they're paying Cyril for being a good puppy. So I think that just poisons the wells of discussion. We need a clear discussion on, are we going to have to implement an austere structural adjustment to satisfy the World Bank and the IMF? Because these are the concerns that we should be discussing. Because it's a done deal, the money's coming. But will the money be effectively distributed? And what do we have to surrender?
Patrick, is this a sign in the confidence in the South African economy that we are being given this development policy loan?
No, it's a very clear indication that the Treasury has been working behind the scenes, just as Zwelinzima Vavi said, after very frustrating negotiations for a $2 billion loan. And now it's been agreed, the documents were done last month. They just came online. You can pick them up on the World Bank website. And you can really begin to see from the detailed document, as one journalist, Carol Patton at Fin24 did today, none of the others have looked at these detailed documents, that this is not really developmental. It's really ultimately, I think, about helping a particular fraction within the government achieve a certain ascendancy. And the most glaring part of that is because the World Bank says we want to help on poverty and COVID-19 and climate. Well, I looked for climate, and I found actually that $250 million had been requested by Treasury for the Komati, the Eskom coal-fired power plant, for its decommissioning and repurposing. Now, the repurposing, some of it can be done by the private sector for solar and wind. That's under considerations happening. But the actual state money would be for conversion to gas. And the methane gas would be brought from either one of two places, northern Mozambique, where there's a big war, blood methane it's called, or the Wild Coast and the Atlantic coast, where right now seismic blasting is going on, and there are protests going on even the last couple of days. And I think that's going to be between now and October, when Komati is due to be basically decommissioned. But will there be a new gas plant to take over the coal, as Andre de Ruyter, as CEO, wants? To me, that's a sort of hidden devil in the detail we should all be looking at.
A quick one then from you, gentlemen. I think I've got about a minute left for all of you. What should South Africans read, Zwelinzima Mavavi, into this type of borrowing about the thinking of our policymakers?
I'm more worried about your question that says somebody in the department says we are being rewarded for the steps that we have been taking, which is what they call fiscal consolidation. The fiscal consolidation has been very costly. In fact, we want to make a call using this platform, perhaps opportunistically, to say to the working class progressive formations, please be in Parliament on the 23rd of February when the Minister of Finance will be reading his budget speech. This is what they may be being rewarded for. Outside privatizing state-owned enterprises, as we are seeing, but they are being rewarded for cutting the basic education from a 281.8 billion rands in 2021 to 279 by 2023. That massive cut is what is making teachers to be fewer and pupils to be even bigger in numbers for each and every teacher. They are being rewarded in that in 2021, the budget was 259 billion for healthcare. It's now down to 243 billion in 2023. That means there's more shortages of nurses and doctors, and that the chronic shortages of infrastructure in the public hospitals will go even worse. They are being reminded that in 2021, the budget allocated to the police was 109 billion. They have cut it to 106 billion.
Right.
There is now not just 60,000 vacancies that the story spoke about. There's even going to be more numbers of police that are vacant, more load on the shoulders of the police, more crime, more unanswered phone, more people frustrated and screaming of being abused at home, being told that there's no van, we have no infrastructure.
I get that. Fortunately,
this is what the reward is all about.
That minute is up.
The working class in South
that minute is up. I'm pushed for time, unfortunately. Ismail, I'm going to bring you in here as well. When you hear, I mean, the finance minister says this particular loan has no direct place where they're saying go and spend it here, so you can really spend it on a number of things. But when you hear of where this money is going to be spent, will this have any impact on growth?
I don't know. It won't have any impact on growth, because it seems to me this money is going towards it's a palliative thing. It goes for the treatment of COVID. So an outcome of that would be people will be able to go back to work. But unemployment is so high at a particular level that it might not have an impact. So the point is, it is a good thing that the government is drawing attention and wants to fix the COVID, but I am afraid it's not going to contribute to growth. It'll contribute. It may contribute to as a palliative care, as a sort of a patching over the fractures in society, and helping the poor with dealing with the COVID. But there are very serious structural problems in the political economy that need to be addressed. And I'm afraid money can't solve those problems. It needs to be addressed structurally.
Patrick, what does this mean for our fiscal framework?
Oh, it just means this austerity regime that Zwelinzima Vavi has described will probably intensify its informal conditionality, especially on the IMF loan of about a year and a half ago. And that is that any stimulus, there was about 100 billion last year, gets phased out. That's very explicit wording in this document you'd find online. But I do want to say a terrible part of a fiscal boost from a foreign loan when our foreign debt is $170 billion. In 1994, it was just 25 billion. And that is why I think we should be worried about a foreign debt, not necessarily public debt domestically. You can print money to pay it back. And then the partnership with the World Bank gives, I think, all of us who know its history, apartheid lending, Maracana lending to Lonmin, the Medupi loan, corrupt loan, Hitachi and the ANC, and repaying that with the new money. It really is a kind of machinista operation. It's when you're so far deep in debt, foreign debt, I should specify, that you're just taking more money from the World Bank to repay old loans. And that's what Treasury says they're going to do with the US dollars. That's a great disappointment.
Gentlemen, I appreciate your time. Completely out of time. Thank you very much for coming through there. Zwelinzima Vavi of SAFTU political economist, Ismail the Guardian, as well as Patrick Bond.